we say hi, guys?
Hello. Sorry, I said hello right as I muted myself to cough. I apologise.
Well done. That's a good start, Ben.
Yes.
Cool.
Another successful start to a stream. All right, let's go.
Cool. So welcome to the digital versus in-person tabletop role-playing games Convergence versus Divergence stream. I'm Nicole Renner. I'm a co-founder of Fractal Games, currently developing the Dark Vigil role-playing game. I've got quite a bit of experience running tabletop RPGs in person, online, and in a hybrid format. I'm also a video game developer and an avid video game player. Along with me, we've got Ben Byron, who has worked professionally as a GM, adventure author, and events coordinator. He currently hosts the weekly TTRPG news and advice podcast, The Eldritch Lorecast, whilst working as the media content manager for Ghostfire Gaming. Next, we've got Kendall, who's a DM known best for his role on the D&D parody show One for All on the YouTube channel Deerstalk Pictures. He also streamed as a DM on multiple channels and for charities events such as Jasper's Game Day. And last but certainly not least, we've got Dr. Ralph Mulberger, who is founder and CEO of Audacious, the folk who developed ardent roleplay and augmented reality at bringing AR scenery, creatures, and props to tabletop role-playing games. They also host Jasper's Games Week, Aussie edition, on their Twitch channel. Ralph has a PhD in science, loves technology, but writes with a fountain pen, and prefers physical dice to dice apps. I mean, I'm the same in that too. Dice over dice apps anytime. Cool. So let's kind of kick off. And let's start by just going around and seeing what everyone likes. Like what way do you guys like to play? In person, at the table, online? What do you guys like?
Can I just check, when we talk about Divergent, is that the Veronica Roth YA novel series with the films? That's why I'm here.
Is there a role-playing game version of that yet? I certainly haven't seen it if there is, but I'd be tempted to look it up.
Right, let me just get that.
Make a note on that. I just speaking for myself, I definitely prefer to play in person. I went through sort of an odd experience during the dark ages, the dark time, where I played pretty much exclusively in person and then went to playing exclusively online, especially being in Victoria. We had to do that for quite some time at different stages throughout the last 2 years. And during that time, I was professional GMing quite a lot. So on one side of things, it helped me keep my business going for 2 years when it would have otherwise shut down, and really forced me into playing online when I wouldn't have had to have otherwise. I sort of was aware that online was a space I'd probably need to get into as a professional GM, but avoided it just because it was another kind of skill set that I didn't need yet until I did. And now whenever I play games online, it just reminds me of working. As soon as I put my headphones on and I've got this microphone in front of me and I've got a dice tray to the left of me, I am like in my office, so to speak, as opposed to playing with my friends, which I much prefer to do at a table with us all in person, interacting directly, rolling physical dice. I just think that's more fun than tapping a screen for an app. And for me personally, it's a lot less work doing it in person because I put so much. People tell me, well, just don't do this, but I can't not put so much effort into the digital maps and tools and different things that I use when I want to run a game online, as opposed to running it in person. So yeah, personally for me, I do much prefer in person if given the binary choice.
So this to you feels like work then because you've got your headphones on and microphones in front of you, and I'm guessing there's probably a dice tray to your left somewhere in that area.
I think the dice tray is out of this room at the moment because I used it the other day. But yeah, as soon as we went live, I very almost went, "Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode." You know, it's just reaction now.
We could switch if you like.
No, that's okay. It's nice not being in the hosting seat.
What about you, Ralph? Oops, okay, I mistimed that completely.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Nicole Dentist. My preferred to play is any way I can, basically. In fact, a couple of years before COVID hit, one of our games group moved down to Melbourne for a couple of years. So he maintained his seat at our table with a laptop and a couple of webcams, on the table and on the people. So we were kind of to some degree, fairly well prepped when lockdown hit that we went online. Of course, the tabletop went online and things like that. And now we'll play in person when we can, but we'll play online when one or more of us are sick or when there's a surge coming. Yeah, and I have to say, we're currently playing Star Trek Adventures at the moment, actually, which is a lot of fun. And as beautiful as the manual is, the small white text on black background um, is is a bit tricky for long-time players, read old people, like me and my group, and so yeah, I love playing in person and I'm more than happy to play online.
Cool. It must be really interesting, actually, trying to play with one person on a screen, because I've done that a couple of times, and it creates a whole new level of kind of coordination. Yeah.
It was interesting for us through that period, because previously it was like if you can't be there in person, you kind of can't make the session, which sounds kind of mean in modern contexts, but we're much more open as a group. Talking about my home group of we almost every week we have at least one person, and it's a different person each week zooming into the session.
Yeah, I think I've noticed as well, like with some groups, like when there's like 4 people in person and then there's like one person just phoning in, it's never intentional, but sometimes it can be a bit exclusionary towards the person who's coming in. You just don't have the direct eye contact. You're not feeding off the body language as much.
Yeah.
Like, it's great because they can be there when they would otherwise miss out. But like, I do have to like constantly remind myself to try to include them a bit more, because the players mostly are just like feeding off each other. And when you're feeding off energy, like energy in the room's just a bit more abundant.
There's definitely a lot to be said about, learning to manage a hybrid group, no matter what, or an online group. And hybrid is always a bit harder than purely online or purely face-to-face in that sense. Certainly there. I mean, I think the other thing for me is when the lockdown started a couple of years ago, I sort of rekindled my love of chess during that time. And there's sort of a perfect example of, you can play over the board, or you can play online, or you can play on your phone, and but being able to play with it's a real person on the other end, and you really know it. Obviously, yes, you can play against a computer. It's nowhere near as much fun as playing, with a real person, and I think it's just a great example of how tech can facilitate that connection with people through gaming.
Yeah, I never used to believe tech companies when they were saying we're all about connection and bringing people together, until I was able to do it with Dungeons and Dragons and other TTRPGs, being able to join in with American friends, even though I had to be up at like 5 a.m. Or, as you say, if some people are away, or, if a global pandemic hits and it's like that way or nothing.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I get it now. I never used to believe you that it's about that you could connect people. I thought that was, just marketing and soulless. But no, okay.
The two. Oh, sorry, Kendall. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was dribbling.
The 2 or 3 kind of tips I have from me personally in terms of managing those hybrid groups is if you have access to a microphone like this. I know it looks kind of nice, but it's actually pretty consumer grade. You can get them at like EB Games or whatever. They're a couple $100. Maybe that's not super accessible for a lot of people, but whatever the case may be, get really good audio so that the person who's on the other line can hear everybody around the table effortlessly, because that's what can be really hard, is if somebody's sitting far away from the laptop or the tablet, and when they're speaking, the person on the other end can't hear what they're saying. That's kind of like almost more than being able to visually see them. Being able to hear everybody is super important. And the second thing is have more than one device set up and connected to the Zoom call. I have one with the person behind the GM screen directed just at me, so that I can kind of interact with them face to face. But then we've got another one that looks over the whole group. And then the third thing is just to, at the start of the session, you might not go around to every player and be like, how are you today? How are you today? What do you do? But make sure if you've got someone on a screen to get them talking at the start of the session, because then it brings them into the room and makes them feel present to everybody else. Otherwise, they can be kind of a little bit forgotten about until they say something. And if that's half an hour into the session, people have already forgotten that they're there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially about the devices. I've had some experience basically doing audio only, bringing someone in, which is really hard. And the reason was all we had was a laptop, but when you try to aim a laptop's camera down, it doesn't work very well because all you get is the keyboard, right?
Yeah.
And it's always much harder to play those than it is to play a game where you've got, like screens, and also maybe a screen where the table can see the person as well also helps.
Yeah. I had a slightly different camera setup to Ben's. It was it's like one to the group and like including the DM at the table, and the other one was a battle cam for when we went in. And if the battle cam's not working, one of the players is like constantly taking pictures and sending it to them, just like an arrow. You villain. Stuff.
Yeah,
It's a bit complicated, but if the battle cam's working, it's like, okay, sometimes we forget in the play. It's like, your turn. You're like, where am I? What's going on?
Yeah. So we've kind of sidewayed into a conversation a little bit about tools. So let's talk more about that and say, what kind of tools do you guys use, like, as in digital tools, do you use to play, and what about them? Like, why have you picked those tools? What do they give you?
Speaking of digital tools specifically, I mean, the first thing that I use is OneNote, and this I was using before I was, doing it online, so that's not that specific. But just when I think of all the very specifically digital tools that I use, OneNote has like folders and then pages, and then I think it has like this really good breakdown where you can basically map out a whole dungeon by putting like, here is a room, here's the map, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for all the rooms, and then when you click on each room, it just tells you what's in that room, kind of broken down into my own shorthand. So that's how I over prep, I should say, sessions, is by putting everything into a OneNote. And then in terms of like what we had to adopt when we started going online, I mean, like, again, like, technology costs money, so I don't want to always be pointing at things that kind of are going to cost people a whole bag of money. But good microphone, a good computer where you might be able to run a virtual tabletop. It doesn't. When I say good computer, I don't mean like a gaming PC necessarily, but just like, a basic, nice tablet or laptop with a graphics card, and then running like virtual tabletops to that was the one switch I made. I tried the battle cam for people at a distance, and I just didn't have a very good camera, so all the miniatures on the grid just look like black circles because they couldn't make anything out. So that was kind of the aha moment, was swapping over to Arkenforge and using that as a map creation tool, and importing maps into that, because then it was very clear where everybody was at any given time, and I'm just running it off the same laptop that I'm running the session. And then I don't use it. I'm still not in the habit of it, but all my players, I'm virtually never at a table anymore where at least one person isn't using D&D Beyond to roll dice or create their character or whatever it is.
Yeah, like our tables basically have a rule that everyone's on D&D Beyond, because
oh, really?
It enables the GM to go in and check things in the middle, like, or between sessions, and you can go, okay, these are the spells you've got. What can I do that would allow you to showcase them, or what can I do that you can't get around as easily and you're going to have to be creative about, or something.
Mm.
I think really when we talk digital tools for players, the character creation and character maintenance tools are just gold. I mean, they've just transformed play. I think, when we talk about D&D Beyond, I've used Hero Lab in the past for the Star Trek adventures we're playing now. Modiphius have a really cool website with really nicely themed as well. Like, just the visuals of it just match really well. And then I think, the digital copies of manuals where you can pinch zoom and search. Oh my God, there's a whole panel on indexes for RPG manuals, or layout for RPG manuals, or
Yeah.
You know, and whether there is possibly even one good one out there. I'm sure there is. I think the other tech, if we talk hardware tech, probably the only other one, and I haven't got it set up now, of course, because is getting some soft lights if you are going to do it. And anybody who does streaming obviously knows it. So yeah, a great microphone and some good lighting. Which Ben's talk about the battle maps. A good webcam is, but better lighting kind of helps as well. So that's a big one there. Virtual tabletops have come a longish way.
I think it might depend on what exactly you're aiming for, because different ones do different things. Like Roll20 or Foundry aim very much at the all-inclusive. Arc and Forges aim very much at the table-specific thing. But you, Kendall?
Well, yeah. If it's digital, like if it's 100% online game, then I don't know how many tools I've got going. Like D&D Beyond's obviously the crux. It's got like the battle encounters and everything. Map making via either Incarnate or Dungeon Fog, but two that I've used before, both are really good. Sampled a bunch of different tabletop ones. I think the one we usually use for my groups, not professionally, but like play at home, is Owlbear Rodeo. It just seems the easiest. So like Roll20, it's great. But I think we just found for our group, we only really needed to be on a screen seeing these things when there was like a combat with positional specific stuff, or if there was a maze or a puzzle we wanted to see. So if it's the role-playing or adventuring side of it, which is 2/3 of the game, we just wanted to be speaking and looking at each other. So it's usually something like this, like Skype's most of the time looking at each other and at your own character sheet. And then the other things are just with DM prep, like making battle maps, using D&D Beyond to scale encounters. Well, try to scale encounters. I'm sure we all know how that goes. The easy ones kill everyone, and the deadly encounters are done in one round. So,
yeah, for sure.
And I guess and from that perspective, so when our group, when we use virtual tabletops, we use Roll20 for the map, but then Zoom usually for the audio and video, because it does that much better than Roll20 does. And I should really do the plug for Ardent Roleplay of what we do in that space as well, right? So
probably
I should really get it in. So Ardent Roleplay is an augmented reality app for tabletop role-playing games, and effectively it's not a virtual tabletop. It's not a kind of replacement or 3D virtual tabletop like 1D&D are kind of going to be bringing out in a couple of years. It's augmented reality minis and scenery and models, and in the same way that you can use that for online plays, that everybody then can still have that 3D. It uses your phone for the AR effect. But the nice extra point of it is, which you can't even do in person actually, is that you can show every player slightly different views of the 3D models. So you all think you're looking at a church or a building in the distance, and then one says, "Cool, I'm going to get close," and then that person can see the close-up, and the others are still far away. Or one person's inside and exploring, and the others are still outside. But you're getting that sense of, yep, it's a 3D. It's a 3D model, and it can be remotely, it can be around a table, you can play it when you're doing it online. So, which is kind of really cool. So,
you have the cards and stuff where you have the app, and then they show up. You just like put them on the table. You're like, oh yeah, this is what shows up, and you just like wait for everyone to see, and it's a dragon. They're like, ah.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And you can also use, you can have a digital copy of the card on the screen, and then rather than,
mine are in the other room. Sorry.
Yeah. So imagine you've got a card and it's on the table, and then like, hey, this AR tiger pops up, just what happens to be sitting next to me, right? So you have it on the thing, and rather than sitting in that way, there's a feature where it then pops in front. So effectively, you've then got this thing sitting in front of your monitor, like it just sort of pops out. It's a super cool experience, where even even so far as like we are doing some headset support, like augmented reality headset support for things that are coming out. And when I've demoed this to someone working at one of the headset companies, like they were like, "Oh wow!" And I'm like, "You deal with augmented reality headsets every day." But I still got a no wow moment, which is super cool, right? And that's what we really love. Anyway, and that's I guess the other thing of minis is hard. Minis and particularly then scenery and terrain is hard to really replace well. There's this great map making software, but map making is different from that 3D feel.
Yeah, the map making is great, and we can put time and effort in to make them as cool looking as possible. But yeah, the minis in person and the maps in person's always got its own appeal. That being said, you always don't need the high-tech stuff. I think I started DMing with bottle caps on just a simple Chesic thing with like the black marker of like, you're in the room, these bottle caps represent the enemies, and these Monopoly pieces are you guys. And like, that's where it starts. And if that's fun, you can do it. But yeah, when you up the game and you start getting the tiles in, the minis that you've painted and stuff, that's one thing maybe that's what 1D&D are going to try to accommodate with the virtual tabletop. We'll see. There's only been like a alpha demo of it so far, so time will tell. But yeah,
I did find archers, they've got to be wood elves. So I was like, do I purchase these old out of print Games Workshop wood elves? Yes, I do, because I have to have them. But my interest in that tactile part of the game, in having the painted miniature, or at least the relevant miniature, the miniature that looks like what is being described before it gets put on the table, kind of changed to be put onto virtual tabletops and maps. And during COVID, I was really I was subscribed to a whole bunch of different Patreon map makers so that I could pull their stuff into Arc and Forge. And I had I was like collecting tokens, like I was collecting miniatures previously, where I'd be like, oh, well, they're fighting goblins and I have these wood elf tokens, but I really need goblin tokens because that's what they're fighting now. So that kind of, I think it can replace the feeling of the physical tabletop in some capacity, but it's very easy to get particular about that sort of stuff and start looking for the exact perfect wood that you need with a river going through it, where you imagine the fight taking place, and squiggly lines on a mat is just not going to do it for me in a virtual tabletop space, because you have the possibility of having such realized artwork for your maps.
Which, of course, is a problem if you're like me with very little drawing artistic talent.
I've got zero.
No.
Yeah.
The first time I was building a computer game, I drew a wizard, and my parents asked me if it was a giraffe. That is the extent of my lack of drawing capability, which causes many problems when it comes to going to, as you say, trying to make things look exactly like what they are. I'm better at building terrain physically.
Mm.
Cool. So, we've again kind of a little bit divergent to what I want to talk about next, which is, so is there anything that you find that having digital things kind of makes harder, other than this artistic thing that we've kind of talked about? Like, is there something about prepping that's harder, or more of the, managing?
Getting everybody into the same room is harder, because we have people that go, I just Zoom in tonight. And it's like, all right, I guess we can do it. Like, I like I said earlier, I definitely prefer being in person, and that option being there, I think, is seductive if you don't have to leave your house and can just stay indoors, especially on a rainy Thursday night.
But the flip side of that is, right, what's the classic thing, right? What's the worst thing that what are the worst words that a DM hears? It's I'm not sure I can make it. Right. I think the online tools has meant that we can play so much more, and so much more often. I mean, I know I was talking to somebody recently who said, like, now that we've done some online play. We get together occasionally, but we play like an hour a week. We'll rather than trying to find 3 hours to all get together or 4 hours, they have like at least one hour session on a week. Like it changes it, and they're like, cool, we can all do that. It's like finish dinner, 8 to 9 or something. Cool, we all hop on. I'm like, that's a great idea. It's just smaller, more often. You can do. And it's just beautiful.
I'm baffled. How do you get anything done in an hour? It takes us an hour after people show up to actually start playing.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Yeah, maybe they're well honed. I don't know how they do it. Yeah.
Just jump in. Yeah, I'd say like it's probably a generic answer, but I think as someone who likes to get into character when they're playing and do all that, that's it's never been quite the same online. I just think the in-person role playing, as I said, feeding off each other, like the antics that come up, and also when you are in a room with another person, you are a little more forced to interact with them for better or worse. A lot of the times with digital, not like with a professional sort of like stream setup but with a home group, people can get a bit too comfortable at times. And if they're like a bit too tired, then they're like playing on their bed. Sometimes the group dynamic does slip down a little bit. Yeah. And like one or two players will be trying to like keep the energy going, and then another couple will be like that. So it's something, and not as a slight against them, obviously. It's like we've been said we're playing online this week, and they just happen to be at home, very comfortable and very tired. But like, in a room with like four or five other people, like, I don't know, the highlight moments, they're just a bit more of a highlight.
Yeah, I agree that moment where you're in character and you deliver a line to the other person, looking them in the eyes, and then they react in character and respond to you, especially when their response is like slightly unexpected in a really cool way, but makes sense with their characterization. You're just kind of like those moments. I mean, it's like live theater, right? It's kind of like the difference between watching a movie and going to live theater is that there's something that feels more alive about being in person and the interactions that kind of happen there, I suppose.
And so following that kind of thread there, some of you guys play games for performance, not just for others in a home table. How do you find that experience is different, like the performance element? And do you consider it like the same style of play, or is it a different experience entirely?
It's super different for sure, but it sort of depends. Like the different styles or ways that I've played D&D is like long form campaign, but it's for my friends and myself. Long form campaign that is for like a paid group who are paying me to GM for them, but it's an ongoing thing. Or like short form, it's a stream and you kind of have a start and an end that you need to get to within this stream for whatever reason. You need to tell a complete story because it's a one shot, or you need to be up to a certain point because you've only got 3 streams to tell the whole story, or whatever it happens to be. And so I think the first thing that goes out the window for me is flexibility on the rules in those performed streams, because it's just like, whatever, we got to get to the end. You want to climb that? No problem. DC's like 2, go for it, make a roll. You made it a success. Up you go. Like it has a building momentum as you're getting closer to the end of the stream, because you just need to get to that next story beat, so to speak. So there's that side of it. I suppose, speaking about technology, the technology side of it is, like I said, I'm here in front of my computer, I've got my headphones on, I've got this microphone, I've got my dice here, and this feels much more performative to me in a very specific way as well, because I can't stand up, I can't walk around, I'm not talking to anybody in person. And so, it feels like I'm a bit more locked in when I'm performing for a stream than when I'm relaxed and just doing a game for friends.
And Kendall, yourself?
It's a bit more stressful, I think. I think I just like coming from an acting background, anytime like the camera's on and it's being shown to an audience, it's hard to like get out of their head and like just fully enjoy the moment and be yourself and go with it. Like part of me is wondering, are enough people going to like this? Do they like what I'm doing? Do I need to be more entertaining? And then being aware of the time as well. Not to say I haven't had some amazing times on those streams. I have, and that's why I want to continue to keep doing them. But knowing you're doing it for an audience, like I haven't found that sweet spot yet where it's like I feel like enough of myself, but also that I'm engaging with like an audience as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we did a bit of, we used to run a regular stream where it's sort of on pause at the moment as we're focusing on some other things. And, it's absolutely much more performative because you're, it's an audience and you're trying to entertain. I think this idea that you might sometimes hear, we say, hey, our group of friends are really funny, so we're going to stream because other people will think it's really funny. It's like, yeah, no.
The moment, the camera's on.
And that as well. Or they can stay totally the way they are, and it's like, yeah, you're not actually good. It's not actually that funny.
It's like when things are funny for your group of friends because you don't realize how many inside jokes you've got going, and that from someone else, it's just like, what? Like, that makes no sense. Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I think is fascinating, this kind of bent my brain once when I used to work in an EB Games and had young kids coming in asking for streaming setups because they wanted to be, and this wasn't a D&D context, I would assume it was video game context for these particular people, but it's because they saw people doing streaming and they wanted to do streaming, like I don't want to say monkey see, monkey do, but, kind of, there's definitely that mimicry effect that people they see something that looks a lot of fun, so they want to do it. And I think that effect is happening in the tabletop RPG space where everybody just sees how much fun streamers are having streaming and like, well, we can do that. Let's stream our game. We're really funny. We can, and we thought about podcasting our home game years ago. And so we already had this mic because we were, or another one like it, because we were doing a separate podcast at the time. And so we were like, we'll just set the microphone up in the center of the room and we'll podcast it. And we recorded one session and I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to relax and like play the game the way I want to play the game and not have to worry about criticism or, getting a rule wrong, or entertaining other people, or hitting story beats at like specific moments so that it'll remain entertaining for the audience, or go through the process of editing that into like some sort of product. Like it's just fascinating to me, this desire to get everything on stream because everybody's kind of rushing into it, so to speak.
And it's a really, I think that kind of digital transmission makes for a really different medium. Kendall, like you were saying, as an actor, right? Being in a scripted play versus doing improv is a completely different art form, right? And doing improv to an audience is very completely different to, improv is not being natural and just having fun. It's a skill set. It's a whole bunch of things.
Also, generally with acting, like especially with improv, you're feeding off the audience that you can see. You sort of like seeing the little snickers or like things, or if something's not landing, so you're like going with it that way. So it's probably where the disparity ends. Like you should be doing that, but with your table, but your brain wants to do it with this audience that are only appearing as numbers, like little circle head, like 15 or something, and you're like, I wonder if they're enjoying this. Should I pump it? You're like, you got to start kind of thinking that way, and you're like, this improv stuff's good, but you've just got to be doing it with the people at the table, getting the reactions out of them, and doing it that way, because it's a different thing.
So go ahead.
So, I was just going to say, there's a flip as well, though. Like, there's a skill to like Twitch streaming, which I'm slowly trying to learn through the Lorecast, which we started just recording, pre-recording and then putting on YouTube, and we figured out a way to Twitch stream it. So we're like, why don't we do that? But then figuring out the skill of Twitch streaming is like interacting with the audience in the comments as the stream is going, as well as focusing on what's going on and listening to the other people talking. I think if you forget about the fact that you're doing a Twitch stream too much, which is what I tend to do when I stream games, I'm nervous for the first 10, 20 minutes. And then once we're in the game, it's just like running any other game. And I kind of tune everything out. But if you forget about that too much, then you're probably not entertaining to the Twitch stream because you're not, fulfilling what they need from you at any given time.
As a GM,
you're on a tightrope. Yeah.
As a GM, there's so many things that we have to keep in mind anyway. Like even in purely, in-person home game, the very basics. There's so much going on. I guess it kind of explains why a lot of the big Twitch streams or the streams in general often have a different crowd doing each thing. You've got, Matt Mercer and Crit Roll doing the GMing, and it's different people in the chat because it allows you to split that compared to what you're talking about, Ben, where you're trying to do it all.
Yeah, and it's absolutely. I mean, I think the audience is another player at the table. That's a different way of engaging. And one nice thing with the tech is that you can kind of treat it as one person, sort of. If you've got a stream that's really active, it's just one person who's really hyper. If it's less chat, then it's less. If you're engaging in that way, and I think like Neftis Nile, commented as well. There is that flexibility. There's that way of being kind of safer with online and that stuff as well. But I think the real question around it from a performative perspective is what else does it bring? All right, what else does the digital tools bring that you can utilize? One of the things we did with Ardent Roleplay was we added a spectator feature because we realized streaming's really big, right? So when you're playing using our augmented reality minis and you're streaming, you can let the audience join as if they're one of the players, which means you can show them stuff. So then they're at home and they can see the 3D models as if they were sitting at a table. And we had one GM in a Call of Cthulhu game use it in a way where they started to show the audience things that the players can't see yet. Like the players could hear this sound and the difference, but didn't know what it was. And in a really beautifully cinematic way, the audience could see this monster before the players ever did. And it's just this beautiful different ways of building it up. But certainly from our end, when we do streams that are a bit more complex, we have a producer who runs the stream the same way we've got someone now who's kind of doing the video tech and all those things. Exactly. Thank you, Dante. And they'll run some other things in the background and they or even an extra person will be on stream chat engaging as well. But to really do that engagement in a really capturing and captivating and immersive way, it's a lot more splitting of your brain, or ideally having extra people there.
One of the things I've noticed that some streams do in terms of that audience participation element is they give the audience opportunities to vote and affect kind of what the game does. Have you guys done that, seen that? If yes, how has that changed how you have to improv around this thing you maybe weren't expecting or whatever?
Oh my God, Jasper's Game Week and Magic Surges.
Yeah, I think it's mostly been stuff like that, Jasper's Game Week. There's usually a couple of people with a bit more money than everyone else who just like to screw. And I do know, like a friend of mine named the One Year was doing a Jasper stream once, and I had to spare $100. So I waited for the most inconvenient moment to say a red dragon appears, and did it. But I dealt with it as well on my stream. I think it was just on one of I think it was 2021. I was the last stream for the Australian leg, and we were very close to a goal, so everyone was just chipping in, and we never left the first area. It just all happened there. Multiple dragons showed up. There were demons. There was a wild magic surge every couple minutes. It was just at that point it was this is improv comedy. Yeah, I know I introduced the concepts of an adventure, but they're not going to happen.
Just everybody's money saved up from the rest of the stream. They're like, all right, well, we gotta blow it now. We gotta get it out there.
Yeah,
anything you
yeah,
haven't
we've got to hit
donated
it. We're
yet.
so close.
Yeah, exactly.
We're close to
Let's
that
get it.
goal. Let's get there.
I know it's charity games,
I
and it's
just-
great when people try. Well, can we hit that number? Can we hit
Yeah.
this number? Yeah, absolutely. And and I think that's that's just really that thing, like getting other types of audience participation tools that are there that Twitch obviously really kind of supports as well, and everybody wants to do because in the video game space, the biggest the bigger broader space in the industry, the rule basically is you're not building a game, you're building a community.
Yeah.
I think like as a GM when you're running a game, it's the classic trap of I've got my world, I've got my threads. It's like cool. You're going to railroad the players into. You should just write a book, right? As compared to the DM who's like, I've got a group of friends and we're going to build that group of friends and get stronger and do it. And then if you're doing that in streaming, it's like cool. We've got a group of friends and an audience, and we're bringing them in. And how do you open that up? How do you connect them? How do you give them a voice and feel heard in some way? And then what are the tools for that? Whether that's the live chat or a Facebook group or other ways, or a Discord where they can continue more, and and then of course you've got these lovely steps along the way where it no longer scales. If it no longer scales, you've got to do it differently.
I'm gonna do sorry, you can continue. I'm gonna do a quick shout out to Tier. Which is called World's Okayest GM. Like one of his streams, he had a thing where like everything in their game like was them. It was like the table, but weekly he'd put up polls in the Twitch chat for what was happening in the world around them, for what could like big political events, big like natural disasters, stuff like that, things that could happen in the future that the party would have to deal with. So like the party wouldn't always be privy to it. Sometimes it'd be like A or B, like this city is going to invade, yes, no. And then the Twitch channel would vote on it, and then that would be brought in the next week's game. I thought that was a very good way to bring that in.
If we're going to do shout outs, I'm going to do a quick shout out to Fate's Grip. Fate's Grip, a Brisbane streaming group who are using Ardent Roleplay. I was just through the stream up, and Ben and everybody at Indigitech as well, who also use it. I think that's just their general Indigitech. That message was totally not identical to the previous one. It was a completely different link. Anyway.
Send it to Dante, and Dante will put it in.
It's all good. Indigitech is the other one with a tech with a K. It's hilarious. But so shout outs to our friends.
Cool. So let's circle back a little to, I guess, more direct tabletop role-playing game stuff. And so, recently Wizards of the Coast has talked about bundling digital minis with adventures for 1D&D. I've seen a massive kind of rise in people and game sets having digital tool sets. What do you think this means for RPG creators and players?
I think my position on it kind of evolves weekly, just the more because it's a big community debate. I've started off like a bit more optimistic, which is strange for me, that it could lead to something good, just because Wizards did a great thing with 5th edition. Most of the playtesting is very community related, and the idea of everything being in a central place, so I'm not doing like 3 different apps to make things and bring things in, that's all there. But yeah, just the idea that like the community themselves is going to have less to do, less to contribute to with this virtual tabletop, unless they are allowing third-party things to be incorporated. I think that's just it's still in the early stages. It's just the announcement, but we don't really know, like, is it going to be just Wizards of the Coast and related organizations material, or are they going to continue to allow third-party interactions, things like mods or like pre-approved things that they could put in? So I'm cautiously optimistic at the moment, but
I mean, D&D Beyond as it is only really supports canon stuff plus what you're willing to put homebrew in, and God knows I have sworn about that a lot in my home game because I do a lot of homebrewing.
don't they have a I could be wrong about this, but doesn't D&D Beyond as well have a license where it's like anything you homebrew into D&D Beyond belongs to D&D Beyond now? Like if you like it's very loosey goosey. It's not like, you know, if you put something in from Kobold Press or Ghostfire Gaming, I don't think that automatically becomes property of D&D Beyond now because it was put in there. But I just like, I don't know. Forget I said anything. I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah. First I've heard about it. Could be true. I know copyright law is the wild, wild west of the legal system, especially when it's international.
But the interesting thing about D&D Beyond is that, you know, a couple of years ago, I remember when one of our players first brought D&D Beyond to our table, and we just laughed at them at how everybody had their character sheet, and if they needed something, it was right there. And here's this poor fellow like tabbing through, going, "Oh, my spell save DC. I'll just let me find it for you." And now it's just second skin for everybody, right? It's just second language. Everybody knows how to use it really well. But it's also become really all-encompassing, where there used to be Orc Pub, I think it was called, was another character creation tool.
Yeah.
I haven't heard about that for probably 12 months. Anybody using that for 12 months? D&D Beyond really seems to be becoming quite all-encompassing. And then it remains to be seen whether that's Wizards' ideal for this one D&D virtual tabletop as well, whether they will allow licensed third-party products in there. But what I didn't think about until you just mentioned it right now, Kendall, is like modders, you know, like video game modders getting their hands on this and just being like, well, we don't care what they say, like, we're just going to put our stuff in there. And of course, you can't sell that, but I don't know, Dota 2 exists, so who knows?
Yeah, like if they have their minis that they're marketing, but if you make one on Hero Forge and there's a way to like adapt it to a 3D mini that you can put on the table, like, is that officially licensed, or would you need some weird modding thing to say this is my character that I made on a different site?
You know what wouldn't surprise me, and this is not a prediction, this is a wonder, is if like at some point, if there's some compatibility between something like Hero Forge and this virtual tabletop, and at some point Wizards are just like, yeah, you can import your Hero Forge thing over here, and that's where your character is, or they try to build their own version of that, or they buy Hero Forge and are just like, all right, this is over here now, this is ours. Because Dante just pointed out in the Twitch chat, OrcPub didn't have a license to publish stuff in the way that D&D Beyond definitely does now, even before it was bought. And so it's kind of, you know, Wizards blesses the best of the products that they see with an official license, and then everything else just kind of, at least what we've seen so far, kind of like withers away as this one thing becomes all-encompassing. Whether we'll see that with virtual tabletops or not, I don't know. Like that's a whole nother ball game, but it's just trying to predict the future, basing it on what we've seen.
If that is just Wizards' blessing and not like the community and word of mouth saying this one works the best, and then the attention not going to the others, I think there's a bit of the doors kind of swings both ways.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's that D&D Beyond functioned the best, the smoothest, the most seamless, and looked the most like D&D, and so that's why that's the one that you know, Wizards went after to obtain officially.
Critical Role sponsoring it.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. Yeah.
The interesting thing is I'm in software development, and our table has a few of us like that, and we have plenty of arguments about how D&D Beyond is not, in fact, the best functioning of them so far.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, just because of the way things are being stored, or the way we think things are being stored based on lack of responsiveness and home brewing and all sorts of things. Every session we do, but it's the one that's gotten the blessing, and it's the one that's gotten those the ability to buy the books. You don't have to upload 30 million monsters and all of that, which means we use it, right? Yeah.
VHS Betamax, Oracle DB2. I mean, you know.
Yes. We can have all those arguments over whether it should be in Firebase or whatever.
I was about to say, I was like, those people sound awfully a lot like Linux apologists. Like.
The other question then is, so we've talked very specifically about D&D with this, but what about other tabletop games? Do you guys see digital tool sets or compatibility with digital tool sets as mandatory for games, particularly like indie games, to be well received these days? I know Dark Vigil, which is the game I'm building, we've got a digital toolset under development that it is intended not to replace character sheets, but to be an online aid, for instance.
Yeah, maybe. D&D already owns, I think, something like 50%, 60% of the market share, which sounds less than you would think until you realize the next biggest one off the top of my head, I don't know which it is, but it's like 7%, and then it breaks down kind of from there. I think that statistic I'm pulling, I think, from something we looked at a little while ago from Roll20 in terms of what people are playing on Roll20 specifically, to be a bit more accurate about that. But is this push towards digital tabletops, is that because D&D kind of sets the tone for the rest of the industry, is that what folks are going to start to expect? And if they're not getting that from their role play game, then they're less likely to engage in it. I mean, it's funny because I can't remember who it was, but one of you, Ralph or Kendall, mentioned Modifius before having a character creator. And I've been trying to get into the Infinity role-playing game, which is theirs. And it made me think, I should write that down to check that out to see if they have a digital character creator for Infinity, because that would make getting into the game so much easier if I'm not flipping back and forth through the book, but I'm just using the book as an aid to go through the menus of creating a character. So I think that it definitely increases accessibility. And I think that, if I was pressed to make a prediction, probably it would be advantageous to have digital tools in a third-party or non-Wizards, non-D&D game.
I'd say a lot of people are introduced to like tabletop roleplay through Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which has the most accessible things. So their introduction to TTRPG is with a digital tool set that has a character creator and stuff like that before. So when you're trying to bring these people into more games, like other indie games or other fun RPGs, maybe they come into it expecting the same, not because they're judging or anything, but just because that was their introduction to it.
I think that indie term there is kind of a really key one in a sense as well, because we're looking at something that's a hobby for people, right?
Yeah.
And for a lot of RPG creators, it's a hobby industry. And then you've got some that try and build it up to that kind of, if you look at like the game space, your AAAs and your indies, but your indies are trying to make it a living. And, WotC, Wizards of the Coast, or Hasbro are clearly not an indie company. Right. And it's that thing of having a clear differentiation. There are some companies who are, have staff and are making a living and building it up to that sense. And then there's other companies who are, they're like losing money hand over the foot, but their book is out on a shelf and it's great, right? And it's just that slow crawling, which is that whole tabletop space kind of industry. But I think, will it be expected from indies to have these tools? I think the first step around that is that when somebody says, what shall I play? How hard is it to do the character creation or things? Is there a tool? No. Maybe I'll play something that does have those tools. It's more that survival of the fittest in that sense, I think, just like what you were saying, Ben. It just becomes that. It's sort of easier. And then the flip side is it's a hobby, which means you get, fanatics or fans. Right? Let's not forget what fan stands for, right? Who will go, cool, no, I made this spreadsheet and it's in version 8.4 and and you think like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I'm feeling very judged for my Traveller Excel sheets right now.
That's fantastic. It's brilliant. That stuff is awesome. But when you get the fans who put it out and then they're supported and they're allowed or there's a certain, like you're saying before with audience stages, but it's the same thing, right? You get to a certain point where it's cool and everybody's happy for your fans to do stuff. And then at a certain growth stage, you might be like, oh, is this a problem now? And at which point, if you can, you go, cool, let's bring it inside the company. Let's make that tool set official for someone or build it up. And I mean, it's interesting when you look, I mentioned Hero Lab before, who, is character creation with lots of different systems supported. And I think that's the kind of thing where you really want, here's somebody who's built the tools to create character creation and maintenance software, and then others can come in and just kind of put in extra information, and they've got a way for you to upload, the fan-based, collections and a whole bunch of things there. So I think the bigger thing we're seeing in the future, the one thing that really hit me in that one D&D kind of announcement that WotC did a couple of weeks ago was around with the virtual tabletop, rather than, they say, the D&D Beyond and all that integration, was you will buy an adventure and it comes everything ready, prepped in the virtual tabletop with digital minis, and then you'll be able to use those digital minis for other games afterwards. It's that kind of set approach, which we also have in Ardent Roleplay, actually. Like, you can create an adventure with our models. We've got an adventure marketplace. You can buy that adventure. It's got everything prepped. You can just start playing, and you've got all the models there, and then they're the models, and you own the models, and you can use them for other games if you want to as well. And I think that kind of thing around adventure writers or others to say, what are the tools to be able to do that? And expectation does shift and grow and build up. Nobody could get away with, if you look at the first sort of more like photocopied zine type versions of D&D, and you'll get those kinds of zine RPGs, but you can't scale that. You can't get a good games for someone to stock your zine RPG, and you've just got to grow it up.
The interesting thing, though, is, like, we talk about it in terms of accessibility for players to get into it. But what it does do on the flip side is it raises the bar for entry for indie developers.
Yeah.
Dark Vigil and Fractal Games, for us, we're okay because my day job is software development. But if you're an indie developer who doesn't, live and breathe tech, learning how to put together a character sheet, learning how to use Oracle databases, etc., can be it can be a whole new headache. So it's an accessibility thing that kind of pivots, I guess. How far is it too much for one indie dev, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's also a matter of, like, your definition of a tabletop RPG in terms of, size and rules and what's required. Because you look at something like Fiasco or Alice is Missing, which are two examples of tabletop RPGs I can think of that don't have a character sheet, and also don't, would be maybe not zine level, but I don't know. Like, I don't think the rule, I haven't played it yet. I own a copy, but I haven't cracked open the box. I don't think Alice is Missing's rule set is particularly dense, and I know Fiasco's isn't at all, right? It can really fit on 2 or 3 pages, and I don't think that, like, if you're an indie developer who wants to create D&D scale sort of games where you're you've got a character sheet and you've got a player's guide that looks like a textbook, and you've got XYZ kind of like trappings of tabletop RPGs at the scale of Dungeons and Dragons, you might indeed struggle without engaging with the digital tools, as we've mentioned. But I don't think it means that indie tabletop RPG developers are going to be entirely shut out of the industry if they don't have access to those tools. It just kind of depends on the type of game you're trying to make in some capacity.
It's going to impact on your audience size.
Sure.
I think that's ultimately the thing. And when we look at, I don't know, there's different sort of estimates out there, but probably a generous estimate for D&D is that there might be 50 million players globally. That's what I'm talking about over the years, right? And they're maybe, I'd say, probably more like 80% of the market, probably, right? And that 50 million is nothing compared to the 3.25 billion computer game players that are out there, right? I mean, it's a rounding error, really. Yeah. So it's that thing of, and so but that means, but for somebody kind of building stuff, having, say, 10,000 people with a copy of your book is awesome, which is, again, it's nothing compared to the scale of big RPGs. And it's just that scale bit. So it's a different thing, right? It's like instant coffee. may or may not be instant, but it's not coffee. But it's just a different drink,
I feel like that could be the start of another argument.
Yeah.
Companies, I can't even think of the publishers off the top of my head for the games that I mentioned, whether they're operating even in a full-time capacity for what size of team. So I suppose you're right. It's a bit of a cop-out to say, like, it depends on your definition of success. But if we're defining success as somebody having their main source of income be their game designing, then it just depends on, like you said, Ralph, scale. Is it a company of 10 to 50 to 100 people, or is it like 2 or 3 people that kind of, are just producing their game?
Yeah. And speaking of computer games, there have been some recent high-profile conversions of tabletop role-playing campaigns to single-player digital games. Neverwinter Nights, the Baldur's Gate series, Baldur's Gate 3 specifically for 5e, and the recent Owlcat games, which were literal conversions of published Pathfinder campaigns, like almost word for word, with a few tweaks, into digital games. What do you guys think of that and what it does for the industry, our industry?
I think that video games, exactly as Ralph just mentioned, the video game industry is so much larger than the tabletop RPG industry, but invites people into the tabletop RPG industry. I knew the names Neverwinter Nights and Baldur's Gate, and there's another one, Icewind Dale, I think, off the top of my head. I never played them, but I knew the names of these games when I was a teenager, having no idea they had any association with D&D until actually relatively recently, when wasn't there an Icewind Dale adventure? I can't think of its name off the top of my head. Relatively recently,
I think it is just called. Yeah, it is. Just
and I was like, hey, wait a minute, that's
a
video. Oh, they did it to me again. This is like Baldur's Gate all over again. It was D&D all along. I think it's only a positive thing, and even non-tabletop RPG games. I very famously constantly talk about The Witcher as a video game that kind of got me into tabletop RPGs in a way, or at least I draw very heavily from that video game, the third one in particular, in the way that I run my games, and am very heavily influenced by it. And that did a conversion from a book to a video game, and then to a tabletop RPG from the video game very specifically. So, it's kind of like putting something into Google Translate and letting it go back and forth again and again and again. I'm sure we're going to see video games that become tabletop RPGs, that become video games again, that then, get a new rule system because something happens in the video game that makes it really interesting.
So speaking of that, that's actually already happened. So Pathfinder, there's a campaign called Kingmaker, which was published way back when, became an Owlcat computer game, and as of later this month is being republished as Pathfinder 2 and 5e. And they've taken stuff directly out of the computer game, apparently, and brought it into the new rule set. Certainly, I've done the same at a home level with a different Pathfinder campaign, which became a computer game, and that's what I play at the moment, actually, with my home group, is that conversion into D&D rules. So it's...
And I think, that kind of digitalization of the game is not a digitalization of the experience of playing a tabletop role-playing game. It's transmedia. It's a different media. It might have the narrative beats. It might have the characters and the storyline and the themes and the aesthetic, but it doesn't have the experience of sitting around a table and playing with friends in that way.
Like watching a Star Wars movie versus playing Knights of the Old Republic.
Absolutely.
It's a different thing. And I do know that at least with Baldur's Gate, there is going to be like a Divinity Original Sin 2 style. You get like 4 characters and you all play on your own computers and go through it. So that's probably the closest thing to it. Also, speaking about like agreeable community decisions, I think when Divinity Original Sin came out, everyone was like, this is the closest thing to D&D being digitized, like in a game, like as far as that's concerned. And then they're like, okay, we're getting Larian to do Baldur's Gate. Everyone just went, yep.
And it is pretty close because, the multiplayer is already out for Baldur's Gate 3. I've played it a few times with a few friends. And it is relatively close. Yeah, not exactly the same, of course, but relatively.
It just reminds me, it's not as direct a comparison, but it just kind of reminds me in a weird way of like Star Wars turning into like video games with BioWare doing their Knights of the Old Republic RPGs. And then when it really felt like BioWare were like, we want to make more space games, but we don't want to pay LucasArts any more money. So they made Mass Effect. And that was this really great RPG video game that it wouldn't surprise me if... I think there's already a 5e hack out there that's like Mass Effect 5e. It wouldn't surprise me if within 5 years we've got an official Mass Effect role-playing game. So you can see the two industries kind of, fish jump between the two streams. I don't know what sort of analogy I'm looking for here, but they're very closely kind of married together.
I'd say if you want a Mass Effect TTRPG, you should play Starfinder.
Okay.
It's one I want to play a lot more. I've done like little tastes of it here and there. Really like it, but once again, trying to find groups to play it. So it's based off Pathfinder first edition. It's set in the same Pathfinder world, just in the future.
I mean, there are four of us on the stream, and that's what you need for a game, technically.
This is a conversation I was having a conversation with someone last night who was like, I really want to play Cyberpunk now that, they've seen the Netflix series, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hit me. I want to learn how to play Cyberpunk, like let's stop complaining that everything's D&D and just find people that want to play the same games.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at The Expanse, right? The Expanse started as a homebrewed RPG game. Then they wrote novels based on that. Then they made a TV series, and now it's out as an RPG through Green Ronin, right? I mean, it's full circle. And as Neptunes said, there's a TTRPG for Fallout.
Yeah.
That I think is a Modiphius one from memory again, right? It's
I feel like we need to find which one of these has the longest thread in terms of like it going from this to that, and then it became this, and now it's back to that, and that's
what I was saying before. It's transmedia, right? It's a way of going, cool. Here's this thread that goes through. It's different types of media. Ideally, you've got people involved who were involved in previous ones or other ones, so you're getting a stronger aesthetic kind of feel from it, that has that continuity between them. But then ideally you're also getting an expert in the other form of media to work on it who will actually make it a really good whatever that other media is. You don't necessarily want RPG creators to then make a TV show.
The first Dungeons and Dragons movie, the one in 2000, was that's kind of what happens there. Like it was someone
the Critical Role TV show, the comics. They're not. The audience for that isn't going to be as enthusiastic as critters are.
Yeah.
If they came in just through the comic, through the cartoon, you're not going to have that same engagement as the people who came through the stream.
Yeah, most common feedback that I've heard personally with the Legends of Vox Machina is that critters love it, and then new fans are like, "What's this?" And it's kind of like it makes sense. I'm like, look, it was funded by the fans, so of course they're going to make it for the fans. I understand why, but when you're when critters are trying to pitch it to their friends so that they can watch and get into it, it's like
it's not going to be a gateway to the stream.
Yeah, it's not very. Yeah, it throws you in the deep end and has a lot of in-jokes in it. It's not the best entryway.
I mean, that tends to be the case, and not just with video games, but also in terms of anything where it's crossing media. If you look at popular books turned into movies, for instance, it's often polarizing. Fans either love it because it's got all the in-jokes they want, but then others are staring at it and going, "Wait, what?" Or it caters for that new audience, and the fans are left going, "But you broke the setting and the rules in all these 25 different places, so I don't like you anymore." Yeah.
I mean, I think Cyberpunk is a really good example of this being done well, because both the video game and the tabletop RPG are getting a massive boon from the Netflix series. The Witcher, video game, and I wouldn't be surprised if the tabletop RPG as well also got a big boon when Henry Cavill first put on the white wig. So
Gwent definitely went up.
yeah, but Gwent's so good. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Gwent's just so good.
I think it works sometimes. It's just that a lot of the time it does tend to fall flat. There are always exceptions, right? The exception proves the rule, but that's a general thing.
Yeah.
Like
Lord of
all
the Rings
adaptations.
trilogy's the big exception. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean the original trilogy. I have many opinions on the subsequent.
the original trilogy. Yeah, I said the trilogy. Yeah, but like as far as like it was, there was Tolkien scholars and people who hadn't heard of Tolkien, and like that was the dynamic. At least when I was in high school when those movies came out. So then you had like Tolkien fans getting something they never thought they would get to that quality, and just people who had never heard of it being like, what is this new thing? This is amazing. It's one of the few examples where it's just like it's been that very good bridge.
Agreed.
Yeah, adaptation. Good adaptations are few and far between. And sometimes can be really different. Like if you look at Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and Blade Runner, fantastic book, great film, really different in some really core threads of like the narrative, completely but great, different. And they are. Yeah. It's really good adaptation.
So we've talked about how these different mediums kind of can result in different experiences and stuff. So what are some tabletop role-playing game moments that you've had and enjoyed that you think would be hard to capture in video games or movies, or like an alternate media source, or vice versa?
I mean, this is when video games started getting really popular, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm going to make a generalized statement that's not necessarily true, but I think there's an air of like, why would you play a tabletop role-playing game where you have to imagine everything when you can play the video game? And you're sitting on the couch, you're much more relaxed, and you're fully engaged the whole time, and just the action of moving through the space is enjoyable in a video game as opposed to a tabletop RPG where you don't really get that movement through the space so much. But I think somebody was telling me this the other day, actually. It's like the real selling point of tabletop RPGs is the social aspect. Right, and you can get that through video games, but I think what tabletop RPGs scratch on fairly specifically, I think Kendall and I were mentioning it earlier, was that moment where you look someone dead in the eyes and you say, I say this, and then that person reacts to you, and then they say something, and then the scene suddenly feels very alive, and the moment feels very alive, and it's almost a cliche at this point to reminisce on your campaigns and talk about stuff that you did with your players as if you really did it. Not remember the time we played the RPG where we slew the dragon. You say, remember the time we slew the dragon, together, and that was really awesome. And I think that social video games can capture that to some capacity, but there's a specific flavor of that D&D and tabletop RPGs capture that I think video games can't quite.
Yeah. Like there are different kinds of joy. Like I know we have very few words for it, but there are very different languages expand on it. Like I think Greek has 5 different terms for love and everything like that. That's very much sidetracking things. But yeah, there are different kinds of joy that you get from gaming. Like finishing a solo play game that was really hard and challenging, like Dark Souls, is one kind. Passing a hard trial or raid with your group for the first time in video games is another kind. And then what Ben was talking about, the looking in the eye, or one thing I had, I think 2 nights ago via a digital game, speaking of digital versus in person, was when 2 of us, myself and another player, because I was playing in it, not DMing, figured out what was going on at the same time. And everyone's like, what's happening? What's this mystery? And everyone saw me and the other guy just kind of go at the same time. And that's now a classic moment in the game of somehow we both had the realization immediately. And it's that kind of joy, that kind of memory is not going to come with, say, an MMORPG or like a Soulsborne sort of thing, but they're different. At the same time, D&D is not going to really capture the joy you get from those specific things as well. So yeah.
And I think there's a big thing, computer games have a certain physical skill aspects to it, that you clearly don't have, right? Button mashing or just making that jump or those things. Like, yep, you've rolled, but it's different for if you have honed, your controller skills to do it. There's something different there and a different sense of success. And like I think as Kendall said, MMORPGs with like group raids and those things bring something else in. Like, I think that feeling of like, when our group just did something crazy and it sticks with you and it's so much fun. Leroy Jenkins.
Leroy Jenkins. Yeah.
It happens. It's just so much more rare, I think.
Video games,
it happens more often. Yeah, rare in video games. Happens just probably so much more when you're face to face. And I think to me, it's really that eye contact, that face to face, that group connection, which is also why we went augmented reality rather than virtual reality or screen based, because we're like, well, the AR is there, but it doesn't break the human connection. Because to me, that's the really big differentiator for tabletop role playing games. It's that people playing with each other with these tools and things, not people playing together in a game, right? You're playing with each other, you're not playing together, I guess is the thing, right? And that's that's the big thing, and that's the really fun, and whatever that connection is, and it happens so many times during a session, right? Whether somebody rolls badly, like happened with our Star Trek adventure the other night, and the phaser, like they go to shoot and the phaser flips out of their hand because it was a 1 and a bad effect and they were pushing it, and it's just like it's just those stupid things that no, your best open world game in the computer game open world, ideal sense is never going to be as open world as a DM and a group of people where the DM is able to just adapt to what you want.
I think connected to that, there's also the fact that as a GM, we feel licensed in a way to be sillier than a computer game can, because a computer game has to reflect, say, a so-called reality. But if a player rolls a 1 at the table, the entire table kind of understands and expects something stupid to happen, right? And that's when you can get the gun flipping out of your hand. But a computer game would never be able to do that, because if they did, there would be kickback from a fairly large portion of their fan base going, but that's not believable, sort of thing. And so, there's that. And also, as Netflix now commented, TTRPGs don't have autosave. You can't go back and
I saw that. Yeah. I saw that, and that made me think, another thing video games can't really replicate is if your character dies.
Oh.
And you have to make a new one and integrate that in. Like, I'm a little bit of a masochist in that way. Like, I kind of enjoy it when my character's dead. It is sad and it's emotional and it's a thing, but then it's like, oh, now I get to make a new one and bring it in, as opposed to, oh, I haven't passed this level yet, I'll keep retrying.
I've seen a couple of games that do it reasonably well, but they tend to be what we call like generational stories, where it's designed around the premise that at some point you will die and your son or your cousin or whoever picks up the tale from there.
Yeah. But in that way, it's like it's a scripted thing, like it's supposed to happen or something, as opposed to. Oh, sorry, I'm probably not as.
So the ones that I'm talking about, it is random as you play. It's more that it's built in that at some point they expect you to die, and so you pick up someone else and they join your party. So it's not scripted to happen. Okay. It's built in with the expectation that you're not going to survive long enough. Cool. Well, we've got a few minutes left, and I just wanted to throw it open to the chat, see if there are any questions that anyone wants to ask. And in the meantime, while that's going on, and we'll see if we get any questions from there, My last kind of question to you guys is, role-playing communities have started springing up around non-RP based video games. Grand Theft Auto 5 is one that I'm aware of that has an entire community server where role players have jobs and experience stories and stream that to an audience, and it's vastly different to the original intention of the game. What do you think of this? Like, can you see it affecting tabletop RPGs and how they develop?
That's actually news to me. Yeah, I don't know how I wasn't more aware of that before, but yeah, I might need a moment to consider.
It's the same sort of thing with Minecraft as well, as has just been mentioned. There's Minecraft is very specifically a world-building kind of game at the heart of it, but it's created role-playing communities around it, which by the looks of it, Ben is part of.
No, I actually don't think I've ever played more than 10 minutes of Minecraft at a time, but my brother was telling me some amazing stories from when he was on a Minecraft server that I'm going to get the finer details of this story slightly wrong, but it's still an incredible story of they had this place, the Kingdom, and there was the king who was basically the dude who owned the server, and they figured out that there was some sort of ore in Minecraft that was common enough that everybody could get their hands on it, but rare enough that it basically became the gold standard of that server. And so they start, like the king would give them a plot of land, and that's where they would, go and start constructing their space. And if there was a disagreement between two players on the server, the whole town had to come together and they had to have like a trial. And at one point, somebody's house started burning down. This person had a pet pig called Wilbur, and the whole community got together and started throwing water on the house to try to stop it from burning down. So it was like 30 people in this server all running, getting water, putting it on the fire back and forth. And at the end of it, they put it out. Half the house was saved. They're like, oh, all right, we're good. Where's Wilbur? And there was just on the bottom floor like a floating pork chop where he had unfortunately been cooked by the fire. So it sounds amazing. I haven't done any of this myself yet in Minecraft or Grand Theft Auto or anything, but it definitely sounds interesting.
I think the closest thing I can think of, and it's nowhere near as good as that, is just I play Final Fantasy 14 online, and then there was the period where you could buy what was just called Coke, which I assumed they meant to sort of be like the Coke can. At least that's what it was called. But you could upgrade it to something called purified Coke. So that didn't actually do anything in the game. Like all you could do would be like sell it to someone, to like a market vendor, to get like a bit of money for it. But there's a market board on FF14, and everyone just agreed that purified Coke had to be very expensive. So even though you could get this thing kind of for free, if you did certain missions and then just sell it to like an NPC vendor, everyone was just putting it on this player-to-player market board, and it was like the most cost-effective way to make money for like this big period.
That's awesome. I think I've just completely we're talking about RPGs. Sorry. We're talking about RPG adaptations that come out of things. Role-playing is like the first way we learn. Like it's what kids do, and we're actually using the platform that we built for Art and Roleplay for role-playing games. We actually use those in education settings as well, and the bigger edutech kind of space from a corporate perspective. But I think it's awesome. It's when people kind of go, that's cool, I want to role-play that. That's that awesome step towards like you want to role-play it online in communities, but you could, like, what if there was more game frameworks that allow you to then play it out and you make your homebrew or your rules around that, and a great example of that is the generic office roleplay Facebook group.
That sounds painful.
Where people roleplay. I'll send a link through where people roleplay being in an office and send memos, and I mean it's hilarious because it's in a really fun way, but it's sort of bizarre. But I think that's another entryway to try and get people in, like try and find where people role play settings that they love and then come across. And there was also a question there around what
setting.
what video game setting people would love to see is a full TTRPG rule set. And to me, it's Elite. The space kind of trading, space exploration game would be just so cool.
Somebody mentioned Elite Dangerous, which reminded me of a crazy story when I was trying to learn how to play that game, because it's an extremely technical space flight sim. And I ran out of fuel, like right next to a star. And I was like, I have no idea how to get out of this situation. If I quit and reload, I'm still going to be here. So I Googled it, and it put me onto a website about these dudes called like the Elite Dangerous Refueling Service. And this dude comes out of hyperspace and he's like, hey, how's it going there? I'm just see you're out of fuel. You've called for aid. And I'm like, yeah, I need aid. Can you help me? He's like, yeah, sure. Just turn off all your guns. Make sure your systems are turned off. I'll start refueling you right now. And I'm like, okay, this is amazing. Well, oh my God. And then at the end of it, I'm like, do I pay you now? Like, how does this work? He's like, no, it's just a free service that we provide for the community. It's great. And I was like, amazing. You know, it was this really emergent, like role-playing type experience that had I been more versed in the game, maybe I would have been like, oh man, I've been stuck out here for like 6 months and I'm running out of food. I desperately need help, and like really role-play the situation myself. But
now I totally want to hop onto random D&D Twitch streams and say that I'm a storekeeper with one of those. Hi, it's your tinker coming through. Is anybody want to buy anything?
I mean,
We've got some...
that sounds like, there are enough streams out there that could almost be your job. You say, I will role play your storekeeper on whatever stream you want, and I'll bring my own little like store list with all my prices and stuff. So GM, you don't have to worry about it. I'll just come in and be your storekeepers.
I mean, I think ultimately what all these things are, Minecraft, Elite Dangerous, Grand Theft Auto, when they when they make player interaction possible, what they can really become is just another interface that's honestly not entirely different from a virtual tabletop. Because the way that I was preparing my games for during lockdowns when I was using VTTs, first time I ran Lost Mines of Phandelver, I just was like describing the village of, I can't remember what it's called because I called it something different, but it's the village where the dragon is. I don't think that's where the dragon is. I think that's the one that they go to. But I'm like, oh, there's this building here and there's this building there and there's that building over there. When I ran it on a virtual tabletop, I literally pulled up the map and I fog of warred it. And I fog of warred the trees, and then I fog of warred secret passages through the trees. If the players like made perception checks, I'd be like, yeah, you can push through here, and then move their token so that they could see this like thin passage through trees that would get them to another part of the village. I've used fog of war to create hidden rooms with an object that blocks the fog of war as a statue, and then they realize it moves to the side and reveals an entire other room to the party. And I was like, I'm really video gamifying this experience in some capacity. And I think that, on some scale somewhere, you've got like Minecraft or Grand Theft Auto with high fidelity up here, and you've got the like tabletop RPG, virtual tabletop with interactive tools kind of, somewhere along here all the way back to a fully pen and paper tabletop.
No, I do the same thing. Like, I find particularly for dungeons, that's a really big thing, because when you play with 3D terrain, it takes so long to set up between scenes or between rooms that the ability to just pull and scan across a much bigger file on your TV screen is a lot more helpful.
Much easier. Yeah.
Cool. So we need to wrap up in the next few minutes. Does anyone have any last thoughts about what they want to, or anything they want to add about anything we've discussed or not discussed that you wanted to just flag as a thought? No?
Just looking back at what our digital versus in-person TTRPGs, Convergence or Divergence. Yeah, I think everything goes through those Divergence, Convergence kind of, hourglassy weird loops. I think at the moment, obviously, because of COVID, we saw this massive digitalization, and then you're going to get a whole bunch of kind of pendulum swings the other way and saying, no, touch me with anything digital again. But I think, we're going to see, some people will realize some of these tools are super useful. And one thing the word got dropped, but I don't think not in that kind of way, which is accessibility. I think there are so many digital tools that open up, for when you're hearing impaired or vision impaired, or if you've got, aphantasia and you can't visualize, no matter how good your GM describes it, you just can't visualize it. So, having things like augmented reality or other tools, to help get everybody on the same page and see it and go, right, I know what I'm looking at. It's good. I think there's so much that just evens the playing field for everybody. And there's just going to be, I think tools are good. Tools are good. Tools good.
The statement. Tools good.
Yeah.
Tools good. Tool proficiency.
And of course, that thing that Ben said when his audio wasn't working, that's the one takeaway. Obviously, if you didn't get that,
away,
it's
that was the gold right there.
Cool. Well, thanks, Ralph, Ben, and Kendall, and thanks to everyone who tuned in to watch us chat about digital and in-person tabletop RPGs. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks, Nick, for hosting, and thanks, Dante.